People didn't wander into the Grimoire. It wasn't that sort of bookshop. People found it by some force even Maggie, the proprietor, didn't understand. If one was meant to find the shop, one did. Otherwise, it was unnoticeable. Alvin, the nephew of the former proprietor, Mr. Mustby, came as he pleased, and so did Mr. Strundale, who ran the Wart and Willow Apothecary a few doors down. But on the other hand, Maggie's brother Kyle, well, he'd never found his way, and she was not about to invite him. Located at the front of the ground floor of an old house, the shop smelled of old paper, glue, wax, with slight undernotes of mildew and mice. It was full of books, as one might expect, but not just full of books in the general way of bookshops. Rather, it was full of books so that walking from the door to the corner where Maggie sat behind her desk was like navigating a maze. There were books on the shelves, books on the tables, books precariously balanced on the top of forgotten teacups, books on the windowsills, books on the chairs, books piled on the floor shoulder high, if you were tall, over your head if you were short. This morning, Maggie, dressed in her usual black turtleneck and jeans, sat behind her desk, which had legs carved with dragons, and their clawed feet gripped marble globes. Across the edge of the desk, piles of books formed a sort of rampart, behind which were a scatter of items, a small saucer of stones and shells, an assortment of small creatures, a wooden mouse reading a Bible, a rhinoceros-nosed dragon carved from coal lying on its back reading a book, a winged gargoyle, a crystal owl, a jade turtle. Several candles scented with frankincense, a brass lamp, and a very large, nearly empty teacup decorated with a blue narwhal. Maggie held a dark blue book with 3 silver moons embossed on the cover. In the waxing, full, and waning aspects. It's full tonight, by the way. As often happened when a book caught her eye, it was just what she hadn't known she was looking for. She ran her long pale fingers over the artwork. It triggered a memory of last night's dream. Something about a man cast away in the moon. The first story in this book was, as it happened, about an old man who stole a bundle of firewood and then refused to give it to a freezing beggar. As punishment for the hardness of his heart, more than for the theft, the wind whisked him to the moon, where he waited for Judgment Day. He said he didn't mind. It could have been worse, for the moon only showed itself at night, and so his shame would be seen only half the time. Huh, she said, and fiddled with one of the 3 silver bird charms pinned to the honey-colored braid that fell over her shoulder. She wore no makeup, and these were her only concession to vanity. Several golden lights flashed, the size of the fairy lights people sometimes hung in gardens, and Maggie noticed 2 shelves, one housing stories about Syrian immigrants, and the other stories of sub-Saharan Africa, lengthened just a tad. Such was the way new additions to the shop were announced. Some days, the shop seemed to sparkle, so many books appeared. Other days, a few flickers and nothing more. One would think that such a bookshop would eventually burst through its walls, since more and more stories appear in the world, and therefore in the grimoire, every hour, with shelves expanding to accommodate each one. But it is a sad truth that stories also leave the world when they are forgotten, or when the last teller of the tale has died. When this happened, a small flame appeared above the book in question, and as it burned, the book itself dimmed, lost its shape, and when the flame snuffed out, so did the book. In this way, although the inside of the shop expanded or contracted to fit the world's tales, it was always the perfect size. Badger, the shaggy black and white mixed breed dog, curled near Maggie's feet, looked up and cocked his head, one ear flopping. He whined. Maggie scratched his ear. She turned back to the page. It was a very old tale. In one version, God exiled the thief to his choice of either sun or moon. In another, the wind made him spend eternity repairing hedgerows on the night silver disk. But no one gave the old man a chance to explain or offer a defense. Maybe he had been freezing himself. Maybe he had 6 children at home. He had no advocate, No one on his side. Maggie snorted. Wasn't that always the case? It was so easy to judge, to punish, so hard to find justice, and mercy never seemed to enter the picture at all.